the Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast with your host, Jackie Pilosoff.
No one should have to go through a divorce feeling alone and isolated. That's why I created the Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast. Every show is 30 minutes, and the guests are my Divorced Girl Smiling trusted professionals. They're so wonderful. Financial advisors, divorce attorneys, mediators, divorce coaches, therapists, and more. We talk about every subject that you can even think of having to do with divorce. The podcast is meant to empower you and inspire you and make you feel really, really confident so that you can have a good divorce outcome and a great post-divorce life. You can find the Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast pretty much anywhere podcasts can be found, and always at divorcedgirlsmiling.com. So grab a cup of coffee or a glass of wine and start smiling. Before we get started, I want to ask you something. Are you interested in empowering, strengthening, and transforming your co-parenting relationship? If so, I have a great online course for parents who want not just what's best for their kids, but what's best for their own lives as well. I'm talking about BEH2O, which is an online co-parenting course that will help you strengthen your co-parenting relationship and your personal resilience. It was developed by Trina Knudsen, who has such a passion for this. Trina is amazing. She's a divorce attorney. She is a divorce coach, a licensed social worker, a certified mediator. Her credentials just go on, and she's so committed to this. BEH2O will help you transform chaos into calm and ground yourself in your why to help you move forward with intention, resilience, and a greater sense of peace. Want to learn more? Of course you do. If you want to learn more, go to thelaneproject.com. I also want to tell you about John McKnight, a wonderful divorce attorney in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. John has been a divorce attorney for 21 years. He litigates, but he also helps clients through mediation. John is so wonderful. He is so dedicated. He's experienced, and he really has a passion for helping people get divorced and have a great outcome. If you want to learn more, you can find John at mcknightlawyers.com. Every divorce situation is unique, and people might think that, you get into a big fight and then you decide okay, we're going to work it out. And then you get into another fight and you keep fighting, and then you eventually say, you know what, we should get divorced. But that isn't always the case. Sometimes there's no fighting in a divorce, and it happens really gradually, and people don't even really realize that they're growing apart and working towards divorce. And there's a term called the silent divorce. That's what we're going to talk about today. I had never heard of it, but my guest has and wanted to talk about it because apparently there are a lot of people who are going through or have gone through what is called a silent divorce. So we're going to explain what that is, what the signs are, why it happens, and then what you do. And my guest will offer some advice for it. My guest is therapist Brittany Baker. Brittany is an LCSW who's the founder of her practice, Nix Baker Wellness and Therapy. She's been a therapist for, Brittany, right before the show, I asked you and you told me, and now I forgot, 13 years or something?
Yes.
Okay. And Brittany can practice in Illinois, Texas, Kansas, Arkansas, and Colorado. Hi, Brittany.
Hi, Jackie.
Okay, thank you so much for taking time to be on the show. And thank you for this great idea. I had never heard the term silent divorce. So tell my listeners what that is.
So please know this is not like a technical or legal, like a psychological term or a legal term, but it's kind of like this more pop culture term that has come about in recent years, talking about that slow erosion of a relationship where you have kind of given up emotionally or just aren't putting forth the effort emotionally. It's kind of like the lowest level of being roommates where you can navigate life. Like you're going through the motions, you're picking up the kids, you're showing up to the soccer games. But what's happening between you and your partner is very much that roommate situation. You're not talking about anything deep. I mean, I would even say that you're close friends at this point. You're just living together, navigating life together, and not proactively seeking each other out. Oftentimes, you're missing physical connection. I see a lot of times this is where one partner starts falling asleep on the couch and then just never comes back to the bedroom. Like these things where you just are not putting in this effort to have good conversations, hard conversations, arguments with your partner anymore. You're just coexisting.
Is there any resentment going on, or are you just kind of like you have no feelings? You don't even have negative feelings, you're just like are indifferent maybe?
I think there's a lot of indifference, like, I see a lot of indifference in these couples or at least one partner in the relationship. There can be resentment, though, like, I've had clients who come in, it's like, "Well, I used to ask and ask and ask and ask and ask, and then he just never showed up for me, so I just stopped asking and stopped caring because that was easier to do than to keep asking."
All right, let's get into the signs of a silent divorce. So, you listed in your article that you wrote for Divorce Girl Smiling 5 signs that you're going through a silent divorce. One, conversations are shallow. You talk about chores, logistics, schedules. You don't talk about dreams, your feelings, your fear. There's like no vulnerability.
Exactly. Like I said, I would feel like this is that roommate that you lived with in college or after college that you found on Craigslist that like they're fine, but you wouldn't be friends with them if you didn't need them to live with kind of type situation. Like you can manage life and maybe it's a little bit better than that, but like you're not talking about your day. You're not checking in with like, oh, did you see the kids do this really funny thing? Or how did you feel about that soccer game? Or whatever it is, right? They're just little connection outside of whatever it is you're managing in life.
All right, number 2, you're avoiding each other without realizing it.
So what I would say is again, I gave that example a few minutes ago of like the husband that starts falling asleep on the couch instead of going to bed with his wife, which I'm not saying that that inherently is a bad thing, but you're going to see a lot of little behaviors like that where you're in the kitchen and you see someone standing in the kitchen and instead of walking through the kitchen, you maybe walk around the other way, right? Or you're purposefully avoiding them, like scooting by them when they're standing at the refrigerator. You go to a party and you are with friends and you're not with each other at all. One goes one direction, one goes the other direction. And again, none of these behaviors, I think, on their own are terrible behaviors, but you're going to start seeing this where there's like this lack of mindfulness, lack of care of connecting with your partner and like putting in those moments, even if you don't want to go to bed, right?
This seems really sad to me. It's such a sad thing. All right, next sign is affection is rare. No hugs, kisses, or even casual touches.
Right, right. Like I'm thinking about this morning how my husband and I were laughing and I just like kind of patted him on the shoulder. We'll see in a lot of relationships that partners are not sitting beside each other. They're not doing, the patting behaviors. And again, not everyone is physical and that's okay, but there is this like maybe a little bit more purposeful trying not to connect with your partner in that way or that just kind of totally disappears and maybe not that's not purposeful, but I do think that even physical behaviors between partners, like at some point in your relationship, does have to be mindful and purposeful. And you lose that in these silent divorces.
Okay, 2 more. One, you can't remember the last time you laughed together because laughing is really important.
And it's laughing, but it's also like just sharing those joyful moments, even if it's about things like your kids or a TV show or whatever else. Like you're just really not engaging in that vulnerability together, in that connectedness.
So, if somebody has young kids and they're going through this silent divorce, I was gonna say method, but it's it's not a method. Like, if you have young kids, I could see how somebody would maybe, like, call their mom and say, "Oh my gosh, so and so did the cutest thing today," and it's like, "Well, why aren't you telling your husband?"
Exactly.
there's the problems. I want to tell my listeners that Brittany is a therapist for individuals, but she also does couples counseling and she also does discernment counseling, which is like if you're not sure if you should stay together or get divorced and you want to go through this process called discernment counseling, this is what Brittany does. And I heard she does it really well from quite a few professionals. Okay, last one is that conflict is missing, but not in a good way.
Right. So a lot of people think that like, oh, if you're fighting in your marriage, that that's not good. No, like you're two individuals. You're going to have conflict. You have different mindsets. And yes, how you navigate that conflict is important and individualized for your relationship. But what I often see with these people who are now going through the silent divorce process is that they are just not fighting about anything. They're like, I'd rather not talk to you or ask for your help. And that's where I think some of that resentment or those like contempt or negative emotions that you were talking about may crop up is it's just like, I would rather just do it myself than ask for your help. Or I'll call the handyman instead of asking you to hang that photo for me because you're never going to get it done. Right. That kind of type, or I'm not going to ask you to watch the kids while I go get my hair done on Saturday. I'll call a babysitter. That kind of type stuff starts cropping up because you just start avoiding conflict. Conflict is a version of vulnerability. It is a version of fighting for your relationship in some ways. And again, there's good ways and better ways to do conflict, but in a lot of these silent divorce situations, you start seeing there's just no conflict. It's a little bit of resignation, indifference, resentment.
It sounds really uncomfortable, isolating, lonely, and very, very sad to me.
Yeah, it is, but it's actually very common.
You're listening to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff, and I'm your host. And today I'm here with therapist Brittany Baker, LCSW, founder of her practice, Nix Baker Wellness and Therapy. Brittany and I are talking about the silent divorce. We were just giving you some signs of what that looks like. We're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about why it happens, what you do, what advice that Brittany has for you, and what happens if you choose divorce. We'll be right back. When a divorcing couple decides to sell their marital home, it can add layers of anxiety and fear to their already stressful divorce. Because the divorce is the reason they're selling, these homes often need improvements and renovations. And they just say, you know what, we're not going to do that. We're just going to dump it. But you don't have to do that. There's a company called Renovation Sells. It's a nationwide company that will assess your home and then do a quick redesign and a remodel. And basically, these guys are problem solvers. Their streamlined process will help you get multiple offers and such a higher price. So you don't just have to dump it and settle for a not so great offer. If you want to learn more about this amazing company, go to renovationsells.com. I also want to tell you about Michelle Heffron, life, love, and divorce coach. And what I love so much about Michelle is her story. Michelle has lived the life of the demographic she's passionate about helping. She said she hit rock bottom when she got divorced over a decade ago, had a college-age daughter and a high school-age son. She had no job, no money, didn't even have a credit card. She reinvented herself, went back into the workforce, raised her kids, cared for her aging parents, and then started a coaching practice. Michelle has the best energy. She has so much positivity. She also has a program called Calling in the One to help you find the love of your life. Love Michelle, really, really a great person and a really good coach. If you want to learn more, you can find Michelle at michelleheffron.com. And you can also find Michelle and Renovation Sells in the Trusted Professional section of Divorced Girl Smiling. Welcome back to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff and I'm your host. And today we're talking about silent divorce, a way that people get into this groove together and they silently and very slowly drift apart. And it sounds really, really sad to me. And if you're in this situation and you're listening, I feel for you, but we're going to try to help you from this point on. My guest is Brittany Baker, LCSW therapist in, I'm going to list your states, Brittany.
Mhm.
Brittany practices therapy, sees individuals and couples, and discernment counseling. She does discernment counseling in Illinois, Texas, Kansas, Arkansas, and Colorado. Brittany, why do people go through these silent divorces? Like, where's the breakdown?
I often see it again, it's like a little bit of a slow erosion. And I think life gets busy. We have kids, we have our careers, we have sick parents, we have things come up that kind of become consuming, and our relationships go on the back burner. And again, this is a common thing that happens in relationships. But I think the difference between a silent divorce and the this just happening in a relationship going through a season is that in a silent divorce, you aren't talking about it. Like, you maybe get into these ruts or these communication cycles where it feels like vulnerability isn't possible. You're choosing to avoid and disconnect, or maybe there's built up resentment about something, or your life in general, that you're utilizing to just stay silent and not work on the relationship. I say that every day you wake up and you continue to choose to be in your relationship or you don't. And in the silent divorce, it's these people are kind of um, apathetically choosing not to be in their relationships anymore. And because relationships are work, and sometimes people don't get tired of showing up for those relationships. I will say this too, that I think oftentimes what I see is like the silent divorce leads to these kind of unplanned betrayals. It's like oftentimes when you see a betrayal or there's been infidelity in a relationship, you look backwards and you can see that there was already a silent divorce situation happening.
Okay, I loved what you said that every day you wake up and you choose to be in the relationship. This is so key. We all know, everybody listening, and Brittany, she's married. Relationships are really hard. Marriage is hard, but that doesn't mean it's bad. But you have to wake up every morning. Well, I shouldn't say you have to. The people who stay together and who have a good relationship and who it works for are people like Brittany said, who wake up every morning and they're choosing to stay in a good way. Now, if you're going through a silent divorce, you're choosing to stay also. You're waking up every morning, but you're not wanting it's like you stopped caring. You just kind of gave up. And people don't even realize it, I don't even think. Because it's just so hard to make a change, like, they're probably didn't even think about it. "Well, I could get divorced, but who wants to go down that road? That's a nightmare. I don't want my kids to not have 2 homes." Like, I get it. So, Brittany and I are not judging anybody here. If you're listening to this and you're like, "Okay, this is me and my marriage," we're gonna try to help you. And either that might mean work it out and not be in this silent divorce and go to couples therapy and stay together, or get divorced and be a lot happier. All right. So Brittany, how do you know, like, I mean, what if someone's thinking here and going, okay, what should I do? This is me. Should I get divorced or should I try to work it out? What are some of the questions that you can ask yourself and actions you can take?
Well, I first want to say that coming from like the discernment counseling framework, that really what you're trying to help people do is to make mindful decisions. And my hope is that this information on a silent divorce can help someone make a mindful decision. One of the pathways in discernment counseling is to maintain status quo, but it's really about mindfully making that decision together, right? Not just letting it happen to you in your life, because that creates a lot of like depression and sadness and disempowerment and all kinds of things that make these situations really tough. So it's about mindfully making a decision. And if status quo is your decision, that's okay too, right? But how do you get to this place of kind of choosing? Well, one, discernment counseling is always an option. If you realize this is coming up for you and you feel like you're very much leaning out of your relationship, discernment counseling is always an option. But I always encourage people to kind of start with their partner, right? Like, kind of test the waters with honesty with yourself and your partner, right? Check in with yourself. Like, what do I want? Like, am I choosing this? Or am I choosing status quo? And is that okay for me? And what are my reasonings for that? Or do I want something more or something else? Do I think that this could change? And share how you feel. I think the keys in this is always practicing curiosity, practicing empathy. Like, it doesn't have to be you against this person. It can be you guys trying to sort out like what you're doing with your lives, and making a mindful decision together. And I think that when you're testing yourself, like, honestly, and testing your partner honestly, like the responses that you get are also going to be informative and kind of a path forward. Um,
Okay. Before you go on to the next one, I just want to say, are you telling people like if someone's saying, okay, you're saying test the water with honesty, sit down with your partner and say, look, what should they say? What's the first thing out of their mouth?
I again would always lead with curiosity and empathy, right? Like, hey, how are you feeling about our marriage? How are you feeling about our relationship? Right? Like, how do you feel about how we are navigating life?
Okay, and then the guy's gonna say, I don't know. What do you mean? Why are you asking me that?
So then I would say, and always use a format. You start with I feel statements. I know it's a very therapy thing to say, but I am feeling this way. Like, I feel blank because of blank, right? I am feeling sad. I am feeling disconnected. I am feeling whatever. It's accepting responsibility for how you are feeling, because I feel like this, like, because
Okay, and maybe they could add in, "I'm not here to blame you or start an argument. I'm just telling you how I'm feeling, and I wanna know how you're feeling, and I wanna work this out together because I really don't like our relationship as it is. Not because it's your fault, it's both our faults."
right, right.
And I wanna tell my listeners, that's not easy to do. It's so uncomfortable, it's so scary, you have no idea what your spouse is gonna say because you've been in this silent divorce for so long, so this is a really big deal, and if you do it, congratulations to you because it's a hard thing, but I agree with Brittany, and I think you'll be so much happier to know one way or the other.
Right. Well, and remember, silent divorce, part of how it gets started is this lack of vulnerability, this lack of desire or comfort with opening up. And this is going to be uncomfortable. But I think if part of my next kind of bullet point is like checking your own effort. If you're taking responsibility for your own action and how you have shown up in the relationship and maybe how you have led to the silent divorce, that also is going to reduce the amounts of defensiveness that you might receive from your partner. So like I said, my next bullet point is like check your own effort. Like, what are you contributing to the relationship? How have you helped you guys to get to this point of like this silent divorce? Like, what was your role in that? And it's not just, well, I kept asking you to help me do X, Y, and Z, and then you just didn't do it. So then I gave up. Right. It's like, hey, I made a conscious decision to not have these conversations with you. Right. And that was on me. And so being honest with that. And again, this is also where discernment counseling can be really, really helpful, because counseling helps clients to do this, to sit down, to check in with their own feelings, to check in with their own effort, and to really examine themselves in the relationship and like what would need to change in that relationship for it to stay, for you to stay together or to make other choices. Um,
Okay, now I was just gonna say that if 2 people are in a silent divorce, I would think there is gonna be some resentment. It's impossible because they wouldn't have gotten to that point. But what's wrong with saying, like, "How did we get here? How do you think we got here? I can tell you how I think what I contributed. Do you think you contributed?" And then that leads to your point number 3, which is gauge your partner's response. I mean, that's a big deal if they say, "You're being such a bitch about this. I don't even wanna talk about it. We're fine. Everything's fine. Why are you opening this door?" Well,
right.
okay, now you kinda have your answer. Or if they say, "Wow, I'm so glad you said something because I would never wanna hurt you, but I'm not really happy." They
Right.
might say that.
Right. The one thing that I always say to, because a lot of people are always like, "Are we gonna be able to make it?" And I will be completely honest with you, I am not a therapist that looks at someone and be like, "You should be divorced," unless there's I mean, I don't even know what a scenario is that I would really say that. I just don't say those things. But what I do say is I do tell partners to think about like, what do you think your partner's willingness to work with you and their willingness to change the relationship. If there is no willingness to work with you or no willingness to change the relationship or accept responsibility for their own behaviors, then that is going to be problematic and creating positive change.
Okay, last bullet point is listen to your gut, which tell me about that because I'm a strong believer in that.
So it's really this idea of like, okay, is your partner a people pleaser? Are they going to look at you and be like, oh, I just want to make you happy, but then not really change anything, right? And this is a repeated pattern that you've seen over and over and over again, right? In different areas of life. If you look ahead 5 years from now, if things were as they are you going to be okay with that, right? Um, the other thing too is I think sometimes like we have to really evaluate the reasons why we're staying. You know, I can't tell you that it's right or wrong to stay for your children. These are all personal values. But if that's a thing that you're doing, does that feel okay to you? And is that mindful decision that you're making? Right. Um, I think that there's a lot of research out there, especially for women, how our intuitions have been kind of squashed by culture and what have you. And so I always encourage women to like really sit down and look to the future. If things were to change, and is that a relationship that you're really happy with? Right. And can you express those things? Like, what is it that you're missing that you're not able to get in this relationship as is? And then if those things do change, if it's possible, and then what things can you negotiate on? Or does it just all feel non-negotiable to you? Because if that's the case, then this may not be, your gut may be telling you that this isn't where you want to be, right?
I think the gut is such a funny thing because you can talk yourself in or out of anything. I mean, you can be like, no, no, but then from personal experience, what I've always found is like one side always starts winning. If you're like saying, okay, part of me feels this way and part of me feels this way, it just always ends up leaning towards one side and you know it in your heart. And sometimes it's the harder decision, but you just have to go with it.
Yeah. 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 The other thing too that I oftentimes will challenge people with in like discernment counseling is if they're unable to evaluate their own side of things, then I really ask them to check in with themselves on like their willingness to change, right? Because in a silent divorce, like, I don't know, we can point fingers back and forth, but the reality is that two people have allowed this to happen. And so if somebody is unwilling to look at their side of it, then that makes me think like, okay, like your gut must be telling you that this isn't where you want to be if you're really that unwilling to look at your own side of things.
All right, let's move on to let's say the people say, okay, we're going to really go for this and try to work it out. We're going to try to reconnect, make this work. We have young kids. There was love at one time. You list on here 5 things people can do.
Mhm.
I love the first one. It says, start small. Tell me some examples of that.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're just trying to get back to this place where maybe we can connect a little bit and we're doing more than just this surface level roommate situation. And so taking a walk together, doing phone free dinners, phones can literally destruct a relationship in themselves. Trying to give hugs in the mornings. There's a psychologist, John Gottman, who talks about this 6-second kiss. That's often a little bit too much for clients who have been in this silent divorce. So we just say, try giving a hug in the morning or just acknowledging each other versus just moving on with your days. I think it's a gratitude or appreciation. Even just giving yourself 5 minutes in the morning, when the kids go to school at bedtime, whatever, just to sit down and say, hey, how are you? Right. Because even those conversations are often gone in the silent divorce. So it's just that being purposeful and mindful about a little bit of connection between the two of you.
Okay, did you just say 6-second kiss?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm, like, really in love and in a really good place in a 10-year relationship, and we do kiss every morning, but it's not for 6 seconds.
Dr. John Gottman, it's part of his program is like this 6-second kiss, and it's about like the hormones and stuff that get released in your brain and it's again that mindfulness. It's taking that moment of connection because I mean, I'm sure not every morning is this way, but think about it. Even when you kiss in the mornings, how mindful is it? Or is it just like a thank you and then you move on with your day, right? Or I don't know, like this morning I was filling up my kids' water bottles and my husband comes up and is trying to hug me and I'm like, I'm literally in the middle of filling up these water bottles. What are you doing? And then I had to go back and like mindfully give him a hug, right?
Okay, he sounds so awesome. I love him.
He'll love to hear you say that, and he'll make fun of me because he was like, "Why are you being a porcupine right now?"
Oh, I love that, and I really am into this 6-second kiss now. It makes a lot of sense. Like, it's different because you would never kiss anyone else for that long. You wouldn't even kiss, well, maybe your kids when they're really little, like, yes, but it's different, or your dog for sure. I could kiss my dog for 6 seconds easily.
Yeah.
Okay, love it. All right, and then listen with empathy and curiosity. This is back to the tips of how to reconnect.
Yes, yes. So, empathy and, like, curiosity are these really important concepts, especially when you're having hard conversations. They also require a lot of mindfulness, and I hope people are picking up that I've used this word a lot, mindfulness, intentional, thought, but it really helps to bring down the defenses and who you're talking to and actually helps you to connect with someone and understand their perspective. Again, it's all connection-based stuff, trying to get back into learning about your partner, learning what's going on in their head, and the only way we can do that is, talking with them and being curious, and also attuning and listening to, like, their feelings.
Okay, I love this. We're kind of running out of time. So I'm just going to list the last three because I want to talk about what to do if you think divorce is imminent. So you also talked about accepting responsibility, bringing back playfulness and laughter, and considering therapy. And, a lot of people are like, we never try. If therapy doesn't work, yes, it does. If you find the right therapist and you go into it with a really good attitude and you choose to make it work. If you're there just to try to say, oh, I'm doing it so I can say that I did it, then you're already checked out. So you have to be in it for the right reasons and find the right therapist. All right, Brittany, what if somebody just says, look, I gotta get divorced. I feel like a failure, but divorce is the best route.
I mean, I think the important thing to keep in mind is that doesn't mean that you failed, right? And quite honestly, from my perspective, if that's a choice that you're making, I'm very happy that you're making mindful choices for yourself, right? But it means that you're acknowledging the truth, or maybe that you do feel like you really put forth that effort. You tried to have those conversations, and your partner didn't want to meet you in that same effort. Um, and it is common that these silent divorces do often turn into like legal divorces if the issues are not addressed. So again, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just about making those like more mindful decisions in your relationship and in your life.
I love it. And we do not judge. Brittany doesn't judge. I don't judge at Divorce Girl Smiling. So I want to tell people if you decide to get divorced, go to divorcedgirlsmiling.com. You can set up a free consult with me and I will help you build your divorce team. I will recommend therapist, mediator, divorce attorney, financial advisor, mortgage lender, anyone else you might need during your divorce to help you. We know it's not the best, but you keep saying, Brittany, you're making a mindful choice. You're making a mindful choice to be happier. That's a healthy choice.
Yep. Yeah. Totally. And unfortunately, sometimes the relationship you're in isn't the healthy choice.
Absolutely. Brittany, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate your taking the time.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
And if you want to talk to Brittany, set up a consult or work with her, you can find her at nixbakerwellness.com. And you can also find Brittany in the trusted professional section at divorcedgirlsmiling.com under therapists. She can see clients in Illinois, Texas, Kansas, Arkansas, and Colorado. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you real soon.